What makes an avoidant notice someone they've been taking for granted? There's a common belief that avoidants don't notice when someone stops chasing them. People assume their need for distance makes them blind to relationship changes. But avoidants pay attention to relationship patterns constantly, and when those patterns break, it triggers responses inside them they can't ignore. In this video, you'll learn exactly what happens when you stop overfunctioning, what avoidants actually notice, and how to make this shift authentically. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn changes how you show up in these relationships entirely. The shift isn't about manipulation or playing games. It's about recognizing the patterns you've been caught in and choosing something different for yourself. The first thing avoidants notice when you stop overgiving is the absence of pressure. Overgiving creates a constant weight in the relationship that avoidants feel, but rarely name. When you're always initiating, always checking in, always trying to bridge the gap, it creates an environment where they feel responsible for your emotional state. They start associating your presence with obligation. Every text you send, every plan you suggest, every emotional bid you make registers as something they need to respond to, manage, or feel guilty about not meeting. This builds up over time until interacting with you feels like work rather than choice. When you stop overgiving, that pressure lifts. The absence is tangible to them. They no longer wake up to messages that require responses. They don't feel the weight of unmet expectations hanging in the air. The relationship suddenly requires nothing from them, and this creates space they haven't felt in months or years. This isn't about them missing you yet. It's about them experiencing relief first. That relief is actually the beginning of the shift, not a sign that pulling back was wrong. The relief means the pressure was real, and removing it allows them to exist in the relationship without constant defense mechanisms activated. The second thing they notice is their own behavior patterns becoming visible. When you're overgiving, avoidance can stay in reactive mode. They're responding to your energy, your needs, your initiatives. They don't have to examine their own patterns because they're too busy managing yours. But when you stop, they're left with themselves. They start noticing how often they actually reach out. They become aware of how little they've been contributing. They see the imbalance clearly for the first time because it's no longer masked by your constant effort. This awareness doesn't always feel comfortable for them. Many avoidants experience guilt or shame when they realize how one-sided things have been. Some get defensive and try to rationalize their behavior. Others go quiet and withdraw further initially. But the awareness itself is crucial. They can't unsee the pattern once it's visible. Before, they could tell themselves the relationship was mutual, that both people were participating equally. Your overgiving actually enabled that illusion. When you stop, the reality of their withdrawal becomes undeniable, even to them. The practical protocol for stopping overgiving starts with identifying your specific overfunctioning behaviors. Write down everything you do that falls into these categories: initiating contact more than they do, planning most or all of your time together, doing emotional labor they should be doing themselves, managing their feelings or reactions, sacrificing your needs to accommodate theirs, or pursuing them when they pull away. Be honest about the full extent of it. Most people underestimate how much they're actually doing until they see it written out. This list becomes your roadmap for what to stop. Next, stop these behaviors completely, but without announcement. Don't tell them you're pulling back. Don't explain that you're changing the dynamic. Don't make it a relationship conversation or an ultimatum. Just stop doing the things on your list. If you always text first, stop texting first. If you always make plans, stop making plans. If you always ask how they're feeling, stop asking. The key is making this shift for yourself, not as a strategy to get a reaction from them. You're not withdrawing to punish them or to make them chase you. You're stopping behaviors that have been draining you and creating an unsustainable dynamic. While you stop overgiving, fill that space with your own life. This is where most people fail. They stop pursuing the avoidant, but then sit around waiting for the avoidant to notice and respond. That's still making the avoidant the center of your life. Instead, use the energy you've been pouring into them to rebuild your own world. Reconnect with friends you've neglected. Pursue hobbies and interests that matter to you. Invest in your work, your growth, your goals. Make plans that have nothing to do with them. The shift has to be real, not performed. The third thing avoidants notice is the change in your energy when you do interact. When you're overgiving, you show up with neediness, even if you think you're hiding it well. There's an undercurrent of anxiety in your presence. You're monitoring their responses, trying to gauge their interest, hoping for more connection than they're giving. Avoidants feel this energy acutely, and it activates their withdrawal response. But when you stop overgiving and genuinely invest in your own life, your energy shifts. You become less available emotionally, not because you're playing a game, but because you're genuinely occupied with your own world. This shift in energy is magnetic to avoidance in a way that pursuing never was. When you show up without need, without pressure, without the undercurrent of wanting more than what's happening in the moment, they can actually relax around you. The interaction feels lighter. They don't feel like they're disappointing you just by being themselves. This is when avoidants start moving toward connection, rather than away from it. They move toward people who don't need them to be different than they are, which sounds counterintuitive, but reflects how their attachment system works. The fourth thing they notice is that you're no longer managing their emotions or reactions. Overgivers often become emotional managers in relationships with avoidants. You smooth over conflicts before they happen. You adjust your behavior to prevent their withdrawal. You take responsibility for their comfort and their feelings. You've probably learned exactly what triggers their distance, and you've built your entire approach around avoiding those triggers. This creates a dynamic where the avoidant never has to regulate their own emotions or take responsibility for their patterns. When you stop managing their emotions, they have to face their own reactions directly. If they get overwhelmed, you're not there to soothe it or take the blame for it. If they want to withdraw, they have to own that choice rather than making it your fault for being too much. If they feel guilty, they sit with that guilt instead of having you immediately reassure them. This is deeply uncomfortable for avoidants initially, but it's also where growth happens. They can't develop better emotional regulation if someone else is always doing it for them. Some avoidants will try to pull you back into the old pattern when they notice these changes. They might suddenly reach out more, ask what's wrong, or show more interest than they have in months. This is often a response to the discomfort of the pattern breaking, not genuine change. They want to restore the familiar dynamic where they could predict your behavior and maintain their preferred distance. If you immediately resume overgiving when they show this attention, you're confirming that their old approach still works. The pattern resets and often becomes worse because now they've learned they can be even more distant, and you'll still be there. The response to this testing phase is consistency. Stay in your new pattern regardless of their reaction. If they reach out, respond warmly, but don't resurrect old over-functioning behaviors. Don't start initiating again just because they initiated once. Don't pour emotional energy into them just because they showed brief interest. Match their energy without exceeding it. Let them experience what mutual effort actually looks like. Many avoidants have never been in a relationship where both people contribute equally Because their partners always overfunctioned to compensate for their underfunctioning. The fifth thing avoidants notice is that their old strategies stop working. Avoidants have developed specific patterns for managing relationships without getting too close. They might use work as an excuse, create conflict when things feel too intimate, go silent for days or weeks, make plans and cancel them, or keep conversations surface level. These strategies usually work because their partners chase harder when they pull away. The pattern becomes: avoidant withdraws, partner pursues, avoidant gets space, partner waits, avoidant comes back when ready, partner is grateful and accepts whatever the avoidant offers. This cycle can repeat indefinitely as long as the partner keeps playing their role. When you stop overgiving, this cycle breaks. The avoidant withdraws, but you don't pursue. They expect you to reach out after days of silence, but you don't. They assume you'll be available when they're ready to reconnect, but you're busy with your own life. Their strategies for controlling distance suddenly leave them more isolated than they intended. This is when avoidants start questioning their approach. The discomfort of their strategies not working often creates more motivation for change than any conversation about needs or connection ever could. Throughout this process, the most important thing is that you're making changes for yourself, not as a tactic to change them. If you're stopping overgiving just to get the avoidant to chase you, they'll sense the manipulation, and it will backfire. Your energy will still be centered on them and what they're doing. You'll be watching for signs they notice, tracking whether they're reaching out more, analyzing every interaction for proof your strategy is working. This is just another form of overfunctioning. The shift has to be authentic. You stop overgiving because you recognize it's not healthy for you. You stop because you want a balanced relationship, or no relationship at all. You stop because you deserve reciprocity. The timeline for this shift varies dramatically. Some avoidants notice within days and start reaching out more. Others take weeks or months to recognize the change. Some never adjust, and the relationship ends, which is actually the healthiest outcome if someone can't meet you with equal effort. There's no magic number of days to pull back. There's no guarantee of a specific result. What matters is that you're building a life that fulfills you regardless of what they do. If they eventually step up and start contributing to the relationship, that's something you can evaluate. If they don't, you've already moved forward. The mistakes people make with this protocol usually involve breaking the pattern too early. You stop overgiving for a week, the avoidant reaches out, and you immediately flood them with all the attention and energy you've been holding back. This confirms to the avoidant that they just need to give you occasional crumbs of attention to keep you locked in the pattern. Or you stop overgiving, but make it obvious through your tone, your responses, or your explanations that you're hurt and withdrawing as a reaction to them. This creates the exact pressure you're trying to eliminate. Another common mistake is using this protocol as a punishment, or a way to make the avoidant feel what you've felt. The energy of revenge or punishment will sabotage everything. Avoidants are highly attuned to emotional climates, and they'll feel your resentment, even if you don't speak it directly. The shift has to come from a place of self-respect and genuine reclamation of your energy. You're not pulling back to hurt them. You're redirecting your resources toward yourself because that's where they should have been all along. The deeper truth about what avoidants notice when you stop overgiving is that they notice themselves more clearly. Your overgiving was creating a mirror that reflected their best possible interpretation of themselves. You were putting in so much effort that they could tell themselves the relationship was working. They could focus on the ways they did show up, rather than the ways they didn't. When you stop overgiving, that mirror disappears. They're left looking at their actual behavior without the distortion your efforts created. They see how little they've been offering. They feel the emptiness of a connection where they're not contributing. They experience what it's like to want something from someone who's no longer making themselves endlessly available. This confrontation with reality is what creates the possibility for change. Not the possibility that you'll get them to change, but the possibility that they'll choose to change, because staying the same becomes too uncomfortable. Some avoidants will rise to this challenge. They'll recognize their patterns, feel genuine remorse for the imbalance, and start doing the work to show up differently. They'll initiate more, plan more, express more, risk more vulnerability. They'll demonstrate through consistent action over time that they're capable of reciprocity. Other avoidants will retreat further. They'll decide the discomfort isn't worth it. They'll find someone else who will overgive and restore the familiar pattern. They'll rationalize their behavior and blame you for being distant or cold. They'll convince themselves they're better off alone, or that relationships just don't work for them. This outcome isn't a failure of your approach. It's information about their capacity and willingness to meet you in an adult relationship. The protocol isn't about controlling their response. It's about creating conditions where the truth of the relationship becomes visible. When you stop overgiving, you stop compensating for their withdrawal. You stop making the relationship work through sheer force of will. What's left is what they're actually willing and able to contribute. That might be more than you expected. It might be less. Either way, you finally know what you're working with, instead of what you've been hoping for. Your job isn't to make an avoidant notice you or value you. Your job is to notice and value yourself enough to stop accepting relationships where you do all the work. When you genuinely embody this shift, everything changes. The avoidants who can meet you will start showing up differently. The avoidants who can't will reveal themselves clearly. Both outcomes move you toward healthier relationship patterns, even though only one keeps the current relationship intact. The most profound thing avoidants notice when you stop overgiving is that they actually feel your absence. Not the absence of your physical presence, but the absence of your emotional pursuit. They feel the space where your attention used to be. They feel the lack of pressure, but also the lack of warmth that came with your investment. They experience what it's like to wonder about someone instead of being wondered about. This reversal is disorienting for them because it's not the dynamic they're used to managing. They're practiced at handling pursuit. They have well-developed strategies for managing people who want more from them. They don't know what to do when someone stops wanting more and starts living their own life fully. This is where authentic attraction can finally emerge, if it's going to. Attraction for avoidance often requires space and absence. They need to feel their own desire rather than responding to someone else's desire for them. When you're overgiving, they're in reactive mode. They're managing your feelings, responding to your initiatives, defending against your needs. There's no room for them to access their own wanting. But when you pull back genuinely, space opens for their desire to surface. They might find themselves thinking about you when they didn't expect to. They might feel curious about what you're doing. They might notice they miss specific things about your presence. This organic arising of interest is completely different from the obligatory engagement they felt when you were pursuing them. Stop overgiving starting today. Identify the specific behaviors you do that exceed what they contribute. Stop those behaviors without explanation or announcement. Fill your life with activities, people, and goals that matter to you, independent of this relationship. When you do interact with them, bring your full presence without neediness. Match their effort without exceeding it. Stay consistent regardless of how they respond initially. Give this shift months, not days. Watch for patterns in their behavior over time, not isolated incidents. The relationship you deserve includes reciprocity. It includes someone who shows up without needing to be chased. It includes mutual effort and genuine interest. You can't create that by overgiving. You can only create space for it to exist if the other person is capable of it. Stopping overgiving reveals whether that capacity exists. Trust yourself enough to find out. Understanding your own attachment patterns helps you maintain this shift long-term. Many people who overgive learned this pattern early in life. Maybe you had a parent who was emotionally unavailable, and you learned that working harder for attention sometimes got results. Maybe you internalized the message that your needs were too much, or that love required constant effort to maintain. These early patterns create neural pathways that make overgiving feel normal, even necessary. When you stop, your nervous system might interpret it as danger. You might feel intense anxiety about the relationship ending. You might experience guilt for not doing more. These feelings don't mean you're doing something wrong. They mean you're breaking a deeply ingrained pattern. The discomfort is actually a sign of growth. Your nervous system is adjusting to a new way of being in relationships. Instead of managing that discomfort by returning to overgiving, learn to sit with it. Notice the anxiety without acting on it. Recognize the guilt without letting it dictate your choices. Talk to friends who understand healthy relationship dynamics. Consider working with a therapist who can help you process why this pattern developed and how to build something different. The internal work matters just as much as the external behavior change. Avoidants also notice the quality of your self-respect when you stop overgiving. Self-respect isn't something you can fake or perform. It's either present or it's not, and people feel the difference. When you're overgiving from a place of low self-worth, there's an underlying message in everything you do that says you don't believe you deserve better. Avoidants pick up on this, and it actually reinforces their withdrawal. They sense on some level that you'll accept whatever they offer, so they offer less. But when you stop overgiving from a place of genuine self-respect, that changes the entire energetic exchange. Self-respect communicates that you know your worth and you won't participate in dynamics that diminish it. This isn't arrogance or coldness. It's quiet confidence in your value as a person and partner. When an avoidant encounters this energy, it challenges their internal narrative. Many avoidants have adapted to relationships where their partner's self-worth was negotiable. They could offer minimal effort, and their partner would adjust their expectations downward. But when you show up with non-negotiable self-respect, they can't play out that pattern. They either rise to meet you, or they don't. But you're no longer contorting yourself to make the relationship work on their terms alone. The sixth thing avoidants notice is how their friends and family respond to you differently. When you were overgiving, people around the avoidant might have seen you as overly invested, or even desperate. They watched you pursue someone who wasn't matching your effort. Some might have felt sorry for you. Others might have judged you. But when you stop overgiving and start living your own full life, those same people notice the shift. You become more interesting, more magnetic, more self-possessed. The avoidant sees their people responding to you with more respect and interest, and this external validation often impacts how they see you. This social dimension matters more than most people realize. Avoidants care about how their relationships look to others, even if they pretend not to. When their friends start commenting on how good you seem, how happy you look, how busy you are with your own life, it creates social proof that shifts the avoidant's perception. They start wondering if they've been undervaluing someone that others clearly value. This isn't about making them jealous or playing games with social dynamics. It's simply what happens naturally when you reclaim your energy and invest it in yourself. People are drawn to that vitality. The transformation isn't immediate, and it isn't linear. Some days you'll feel strong in your new pattern. Other days you'll want to reach out, to check in, to fall back into old habits. You'll have moments of doubt where you wonder if you're being too distant or too cold. You'll question whether you should have just accepted the relationship as it was. These moments are normal. Change is uncomfortable even when it's positive. The key is not acting on every impulse to revert to overgiving. Feel the feelings, acknowledge the discomfort, but stay committed to the healthier pattern you're building. What have you noticed when you stopped overgiving in a relationship? Share your experience in the comments. If this video helped you see your patterns more clearly, hit that like button and subscribe for more content on attachment and relationship dynamics. Thanks for watching.